does NVIDIA make money when they send all their GPUs to reviewers? So I guess this is a supply, demand, availability type question.
The first thing I want to know is how many 5090s does Hardware Unboxed have right now? Because I've got one. I've got a Founders Edition. How many do you have? You've got a Founders Edition as well.
I think I've got about 6 in total.
6.
Yeah.
So we know that there are some retailers that got like 3 or 4 5090s.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that puts Hardware Unboxed as maybe a mid-tier distributor.
To be fair, it's only one of each model. So it's not 4 of the same model.
But it seems like some retailers got 0 of some models.
Yeah. Well, for example, MSI, they privately couriered mine out because they wanted... Basically, they knew no one else was going to get one to us in time. And because the embargo for the AIB OC cards is the day after the FE card.
Yeah.
And I told them, if you get it to us in time, we'll have to use your card because it'll be the only one we have. So they expressed that to Australia, and then one of their employees drove it out to me so I could test the card. And actually got 2 out to me. So basically, supply was so tight that AIBs couldn't even get reviewers' cards in time, which I think when that embargo lifted, there was a couple of reviews globally of AIB cards, like partner cards, because just no one had them. So supply is just terrible.
And to be clear, that is not usual for GPU reviews. Normally, by the time that an AIB embargo, sometimes they don't even have an AIB embargo, but usually they would have gotten the cards to us well ahead of time.
About a week in advance, yeah.
Yeah, especially because with this launch, the GPUs were announced about a month before availability, so that makes it a little bit even more unusual. And with the 5090, the embargoes were like a week before the
I think a month
retail
out,
date.
the
Yeah.
partners didn't even have the GPUs. So all the cards you saw at CES, for example, were just dummy cards. So if you're thinking, oh no, that can't be right, I saw 5090s at CES, they were just dummy cards. There was no GPU on those cards. Or it might have been like a defective GPU from the 40 series or something that they'd sold it on there, not sure.
Some sort of dummy die to sort of give them dimensions and stuff like that to produce a card from.
Yeah, but it wasn't actually the real die. So, yeah, a month out, they didn't even have the dies to put on cards. So the cards that you're buying are very freshly baked. They've been just put together very recently. So pretty weird situation.
The question I want to know from you is, why are there no 5090s? Like, why can't you go into a retailer right now? Like, what? It seems like a GPU that a lot of people would want. Like, even though it's not the most amazing generation, but it's a high-end card. There's demand for it, and they're selling it for this big $2,000 price. Why can't you just go into a retailer and buy one right now?
Well, I have no idea. Is that helpful? We could theorize as to why that is, but I don't know. I haven't. I've got no real inside information on why that is the situation.
Because it seems like, based on what we've seen from some retailer leaks and also our discussions with the retailers, there's a lot more 5080s than 5090s. Like, there'll be 10 times the stock of 5080s available. Whereas, I guess, at face value, you'd probably think more people would want a 5090 than a 5080, just based on reviews, the Halo product kind of thing. And it seems like they're prioritizing the lower model, which seems pretty unusual. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I can only do like conspiracy type theories for you on that one. Like, are they using the 5090 to create that brand hype to then go on and sell 5080s? Are they doing that because they can produce more 5080s than they can 5090s, yields and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. The 5080 die size is about half that of a 5090. So, and the price is about half as well. So that scales pretty well. But then in addition to that, because the die is smaller, yields will be better. So I think when I was doing some die size calculations for our recent Is the 5080 5070 video, the numbers made out that you could probably get from one wafer more than double the amount of 5080 die. So if you're making, let's say, 50 5090s on a wafer, I think the actual number was more like 40, you could get 110, 120 5080s from that same die, assuming the same sort of yields for the dies and everything. In which case, then, theoretically, from a wafer, you could actually make more 5080s than 5090s. But then, is the dollar margin going to be better on a 5090 because it's $2,000 versus $1,000, and the actual silicon cost is only a very small component of that? Like, even a 5090 is probably only costing between $300 and $400 for the GPU silicon itself. So that's one potential angle, but
well, it's
a theory at least.
Well, it's a fact. So they can make many more 5080s than they can 5090s.
Yes.
So that is a fact. It doesn't necessarily explain what we're seeing, but it is a fact. So other theories could be that they're artificially limiting 5090 supply and drip feeding them out to maintain the demand and high prices of that product, because it would look pretty bad if they'd flooded the market with 5090s sort of the same degree as 5080s, but then they just sat on shelves and it was kind of exposed the fact that people didn't really want them. And it's like a psychology thing. If you can't buy a 5090, but you're kind of thinking, should I get a 5090 or a 5080? And then you're like, oh, I really would like to get a 5090. Just that, wanting it but can't necessarily have it drives up demand.
And drives up the price, theoretically. I mean, you see how many AIBs that are trying to charge $2,500, $2,800 US for their Supreme Edition versions. Whereas if you could readily buy them at $2,000, then is there a lot of value in a $2,800 model if you could just go out and buy a Founders Edition card for $2,000?
That's why those models have never made sense. So, again, we're not saying that this is happening. I have no evidence that that's what's happening, but it's a somewhat plausible theory.
And the final theory, I guess, is that the 5090 die is potentially more valuable in another use case. So probably not a server card or anything, but they have made, RTX was like RTX 6000. They used to be called Quadro cards, but they got rid of that brand. It's now
so workstation or something, productivity type product.
But yeah, like a workstation card. Obviously, the 4090 was highly sought after, not just for gaming, but your AI workloads, your workstation workloads. And if you can't get a 5090 or 4090, then the next option would be those workstation GPUs, which typically sell for like $5,000, $6,000 US. So if you can instead use all the 5090 dies you've made for a future upcoming workstation card, like you just stockpile them somewhere, then you could potentially make more money off them. But
yet to be seen, but it's definitely a possibility.
When it comes to these sorts of decisions, like why can't you buy a product that on face value would seem highly sought after, the reason is probably it's financially beneficial to the company in some way to not sell you that product.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But it's all just a theory. We really don't have an idea at the moment.